Um, for those that don't know us, Bob, I know everybody on the call, but not everybody necessarily knows Sherry. So here's a little bit of background on both of us. I'm always pleased to present or share the stage with Sherry because she's been doing this work for 30 plus years, I think it is now. And I've been a student of hers for 20 plus years. So it's really always an honor to participate with her in sharing the stage. A couple things that we cover every month, just because they're so foundational to this program, which is the ABCs of emotional intelligence and leadership development. And the ABC stands for awareness, better choices, and caring. The more we can do that, those three things, expand our awareness, make better choices, and do everything that make the choices that we do and do with a caring attitude, both caring of ourselves and caring of others, that leads to true leadership. And all leadership begins with self-leadership. So the more we can do those three things ourselves, the better a leader that we can become. And as the previous slide says, everything starts with awareness. And Sherry came up with this model several years ago called the ACE effect, awareness, choice, and energy flow effect. And it really just is an example or a model of what life is all about, right? The more we can expand our awareness, the more choices we become aware of, the better choices we can make based on that awareness level. And if we do so with a caring attitude, always make those choices, either do the right thing or the wrong thing, it leads to either a positive energy flow or a negative energy flow or negative energy effect. And sometimes not doing the wrong thing is also a positive choice, right? So really, this is just what life is. It's a series of becoming aware of things, making better choices, and how that's going to affect our energy flow. And everything has either a positive effect or a negative effect. We can feel our energy go up or we can feel our energy go down based on the choices that we make along the way. And that's really what life is all about.
Yoda was right. There's no try. It's either do or do not do. And life is the binary code. If you think of life as a binary code, it's on or off, do or don't do. Then we can take this model and look at, we are in every moment based on the awareness level we have and the choices we make, we're directing the effect, the outcome we're going to experience. And there's no in between. It's you either do it or you don't do it.
There's do or do not do. There is no try. Next is, emotional intelligence is, really we see as a foundational element also of leadership. And Plato said, above all else, know thyself. So emotional intelligence really is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, and also to be able to recognize, understand, and effectively influence the emotions of others. The more effectively we can do those two things, the more emotional intelligence we have and the more achievements we can make, because there's very little in this world that we can do by ourselves. It's about our relationship with other people and how we can maximize those relationships and maximize the influence that we have on other people to accomplish the goals and objectives that we're trying to achieve. But it all starts with a self-awareness, awareness of others, and how we work on those two things together. So this program, the ABCs of Emotional Intelligence Leadership Development, is following this outline, if you will. Each month we're tackling a topic. We started out with motivation. Under relationship building, we started out with motivation. And we talked about influence, how we influence others. Last month, we talked about assertiveness and the need for developing our assertiveness skills, because it's not something that we're born with. If we didn't have parents that taught it to us, we have to learn it as adults. And then this month, we're talking about integrity and honesty as two foundational components of leadership, because no one's willing to follow somebody they don't trust. In future months, we'll go on to dependability, decisiveness, and the rest of the list. So if you know that other people that would benefit from developing their leadership game, if you will, or up-leveling their leadership game, we again encourage you to invite them to attend future sessions as we go through this. We have recorded previous sessions, and we'll record each session as well. So if you missed any of the previous sessions and want to go back and listen to those, they're out available on YouTube. You can just go search for ABCs of Emotional Intelligence and you should find it. Or if you don't find it, shoot me an email or at kevin@strongpeoplesystems.com, and I will make sure I get the links to you directly. Sherry, you want to touch on this?
Yeah, integrity has several components to it. It has an ethical component, it has a functional component. Ethically, if you look at the definition of integrity, it's a state of being whole and undivided and according to your belief system and aligned with what you believe. So in ethics, integrity is regarded as honesty and truthfulness or earnestness of one's actions based on what you believe is right or wrong. And there is the operative term there, based on what you believe is right or wrong. Functionally, it's being authentic. And we can't be authentic if we go back to we're not going to go back, but the earlier slide that said know thyself, we can't be authentic if we don't know ourselves. And so many times, using Core Map, the assessment that I developed 30 plus years ago, the vast majority of people, more than 80% of people, don't know themselves well enough to profile on an assessment accurately. And that's because they put on a mask as a child, a mask of conformity, and they identify with the mask. That's not necessarily authentic. So to know yourself authentically is hugely important, to be in integrity with yourself and in integrity with other people. So it's also keeping your word. It's being it's that old-fashioned handshake, you have my word kind of thing. Acting without pretense, taking responsibility for your feelings and your actions. And that's the emotional intelligence component. The more emotionally intelligent we are, the more capable we are, and the more willing we are to take responsibility for our outcomes and our actions and how we feel about things. Not promising things you can't deliver, and practicing what you preach. So not only do you want to keep your word, you also want to have your word, the things that you express, to be authentic to you, and what you believe.
Your actions need to match your words.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Oops. So honesty.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Honesty, the ethical component is being uprightness of character and action, and determination to not lie, steal, or deceive in any way. So that's kind of the ethical component. And what that looks like functionally is presenting yourself in a genuine and sincere way, right? Not trying to be disingenuous or unauthentic. And transparency, really, in the way you communicate, being truthful about your position, being open about both your successes and your failures, and providing clear expectations, right? So that people don't have to guess at what you're thinking or meaning is, because none of us have figured out how to be mind readers, at least not to the best of my knowledge.
And that's really important, that providing clear expectations and feedback. If you're in a leadership role, that's vitally important. When you go into organizations and you look at what derails teams, it's almost always siloing because the communications aren't there, or it's because people are not clear about what's expected of them. And so there's not that clarity and that consistency that lets them move forward feeling certain or safe. So that's a huge part of trusting a leader, is being clear about your expectations and giving feedback on the results, on the effect.
Okay. So how does integrity and honesty build trust? Well, it's really kind of a function of two main things. It's both a combination of character and competence, right? Having the character from an integrity, honesty, and consistency perspective, being consistent in those things, and not being, living within integrity in one area of life and out of integrity in another area of life, or being honest in one area and today and dishonest tomorrow. We need to be consistent across the board in the delivery of our character. And then the competence, which is relative to the capabilities and ability to deliver the results, right? So we can have all the character in the world, but if we don't deliver results and do what we say we're going to do, and our ability to do so, then that we lose trust as well there, kind of thing. So these are really both foundational elements of what you believe, making you believable to both.
And they can be selective too, interestingly. So an example of that would be trusting a doctor. You know, you trust the competence and the capabilities of a doctor. You don't necessarily even know his character, his or her character, whether they're live in integrity, whether they're honest, whether they're consistent with what they say. You just know they're capable. So that's those elements of trust can be um, combined, or they can be individual.
Yeah. And I certainly want a doctor that has, the doctor can have all the character in the world, but if he's not competent to deliver the results, I don't want him. I don't trust him.
Don't want that guy operating on your brain, do you?
So Stephen Covey, in his book, or Stephen M.R. Covey, the son of the father Stephen Covey, wrote a book called The Speed of Trust, and he identified 13 trust building behaviors, which we've actually listed out 14 here because we thought that there was one more that wasn't included in the 13 that he had in his list, which was number 7, being consistent. Consistency is a huge element of trust, right? We can't just have character and competence sometimes. We got to have it all the time to be trustworthy. So there's a number of these different things. So talking straight, straight talk, whatever, is pretty straightforward, to pardon the pun. It's being honest, telling the truth, letting people know where you stand. It's not, trying to lie or deceive people. So just being honest and genuine, forthright with what we talk about. Demonstrating respect is how we care and show, care for others and show it, right? So we want to treat everybody with respect, especially those who can't do anything, who can't do anything for you, right? So it means even treating the guy on the street, or the person walking in the building, open the door for them. It's not, it doesn't take anything but a couple of seconds, but it's showing respect for anybody that we come across in life.
Another really important aspect of demonstrating respect is to trust people to make their own decisions, to trust people to be smart enough to handle their own issues. Let them go as far as they can on their own. And if they ask for help, you give them help. But respect means not trying to live somebody else's life for them, thinking you know more than they know, right? Because that's disrespectful of their capacity and their intelligence level.
Yeah. Creating transparency, right, is being, telling the truth and being genuine and real and so forth, versus, having hidden agendas, right? Anytime you have a hidden agenda that people can recognize that and smell that, if you will, just kind of like a dog smells fear. They know something's not right, but they don't know what it is, but there's something hidden, something that's not in alignment with their integrity. Righting wrongs, right? Being willing to admit when we make mistakes, apologizing quickly, for our mistakes by showing humility, rather than denying or justifying or rationalizing our wrong behavior by trying to cover things up or disguise the mistakes or hide them unless somebody accidentally finds out.
People, even children, tend to respect their parents if they will admit to a wrong, as opposed to pretending they're always right, because nobody's always right. So admitting when you've made a mistake and seeking to correct that mistake is definitely a trust builder, even for children to parents.
Yeah. Showing loyalty, right? Giving credit to others, speaking about people as if they're present, represent others who aren't there, right? So we, don't talk behind people's back, right? That's the definition of gossip, right? And nobody likes a gossip.
And the effect of that is, if though people won't maybe say it, they'll think it. What they think about is, if you'll talk about someone else behind their back, you probably do the same about me, which lowers the trust factor.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have to worry about what people are saying about you when you're not in the room, that's a problematic situation. Delivering results, right? So that's establishing a track record, getting things done, showing that that we have the competence to do what we say we can do. And one of the old, things is to under promise and over deliver, right? If we kind of live by that mantra, if you will, people that will always build trust with people because they know that we'll come through in a pinch. Are you being consistent, right? We talked about that on the previous slides about the importance of being consistent across the board, that we can't build trust if we're inconsistent. It just doesn't work because people don't know what to expect, right? Lack of consistency creates confusion and lack of understanding or expectations. Continually improving. This is, we need to continuously improve. We need to get better all the time at what our abilities are. We should always be learning and growing and developing our abilities, because if we're not growing, I tend to think we're dying, right? There's very little standing still. So we need to continuously improve and add to our skill set and our capabilities and what we're able to deliver.
That ninth one kind of is required before you can do the eighth one.
Can I ask a question about number 9?
Yeah.
What's that?
The percentage of those who are not necessarily that are conditioned away from their true self, is there any correlation to those who are not willing to confront reality? In other words, is it basically an 80-20 here in both of those strategies or categories?
That's a good question, Mark, because if people are not functioning from their authentic self, they don't actually know what reality is.
Right.
The main problem across the board, and it's at least 80%, is that people don't know what reality is, not for themselves, not for others. And what I've found over the years is when someone has taken the time and the effort to know themselves authentically, they're not judgmental of other people. They are more open-minded. They're more aware. They are more open to researching and searching to find what reality is. They're more open to asking questions. They're not as likely to be to not have transparency. It's a real important question and a real important answer, that yes, you have to know yourself authentically, and you have to. If we don't know who we are and where we're going, how in the world could we confront reality? How could we even do it?
Mm-hmm. Do you think there is a move afoot? Do you think it's more prevalent now than any time in our lifetimes, that there's less and less, because of the stress that's constantly in our midst, less and less people who are willing to confront reality?
Yes, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the speed at which we live these days.
Mm-hmm.
Another is that the last 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, are so invested in the online world that they believe the online world is reality. And so they're addressing quote unquote reality from a digital space. And you and I both know that the digital space, while it's interesting and fascinating, it isn't real life. It's digital life. It's like the old game of Second Life. Or, there used to be they may still be called Second Life, where people were living their life through a game.
Yeah.
So that the digital prevalence is one reason. The speed at which we live is another reason. The shutdown from the COVID debacle is another reason. People have lost trust in the world in general. So there are a lot of reasons why people are unwilling. Their view of reality is skewed, and it's skewed in the wrong direction. It's skewed toward life is never going to be good, especially for those last 2 generations. So yeah, the numbers of people that are unable to confront reality as it becomes an effective way of living your life and approaching things and managing things is being reduced. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think another factor is that as a society, we've become very quick to shun, shame, and shout people down, right? If they do try to express, you
Mhm.
know, confront reality and express their point of view or whatever, there's a very, active process happening of people shunning, shaming, and shouting people down so that people are afraid to speak up and confront the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Well, and reality is in the eye of the beholder. So, at that point, we have to be open. Otherwise, it becomes, well, if 99% of the rest of the population doesn't share my views, then they're wrong. And that's kind of self-isolating.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and the part of confronting reality, and you hear, and we've even had a public statement of alternate facts.
Mm-hmm.
Facts are facts. There are no alternate facts, but we can attend to what we want to attend to. Um, the thing to be addressing when we're confronting reality is this reality, quote unquote, leading to a beneficial life for me and for other people. And so the online world isn't leading to a beneficial life for the individual or for other people, but living online, living digitally, living in the digital world isn't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality there is that it's a space to be in. You can absolutely do that. That's one reality. But is it enhancing your life? Is it helping you grow? Is it helping you to develop? Is it helping you to build relationships? Is it building emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it helping you to lead yourself more effectively? And the answer is no, it isn't. I see behind behind Bob, he's got the power of trust there. That's really cool. I like that. But so when we're looking at reality, the question that we want to ask ourselves is my view of reality beneficial to me and to those whose lives I want to impact?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Thank y'all.
And thank you for that question. That was an excellent question. So
Right.
clarifying expectations. What I hear very frequently in organizations where trust is low or non-existent is that there is that siloing, there's not the transparency, the expectations are not clear. Mark, you and I co-wrote a book, and one of the things we talked about in that book was a healthy culture, and the healthy culture is a structured freedom. And you can't have structure if expectations aren't clear. And if you can't have if you can't have structure, you can't have freedom, because freedom without structure is chaos. And so clarifying expectations builds structure. It not only builds trust, but it also builds trust structure within which we can function and know what will get us in trouble and what won't get us in trouble, what will get us rewarded and what will get us a consequence. So if we know that, then we can make better decisions. We go back to our awareness is broader. We're aware of what we can do and not do, and therefore we can make better choices. So in many organizations, that is a huge problem, is the expectations are not clear. Therefore, you don't have that structured freedom environment where people can function at their best.
Yeah. That goes back to, none of us are mind readers, right? Nobody's a mind reader. And so if you don't set the expectations and clarify the expectations, then you're essentially asking people to be a mind reader and try to guess what they are. And people, the other thing I think about when I think about expectations is we will all live up to or down to whatever expectations are set. Right. So if you set low expectations, well, people will live down to low expectations, versus if you set high expectations, people will live up to them. So wherever you set them, people will live up to or down to wherever they're at.
And with no expectations, people are going to push the envelope. They're going to push it as far as they can. They're going to see how far can I go before you put some kind of structure in place. So you have a lot of organizations who have a lot of rogue employees. That's why they have rogue employees. is because the expectations are not clear.
Yeah. Next one is practice accountability, right? So holding people accountable for their actions, their choices, their decisions, right? That does not mean, point the finger of blame, but it also, but you got to enforce consequences, right? So if somebody does make a mistake or they do something out of line, you got to have consequences, because a no consequences culture is not a very healthy place either. Because people say, if there's no consequences, then I'll do whatever I want. And they'll push that envelope that Sherry was just talking about.
And without accountability, expectations are not really expectations. They're suggestions. Expectations require accountability. I expect that you will do this, and if you don't, then here's a consequence. If you do, here's a reward. So without accountability, expectations are just suggestions.
Yeah. Listen first, I think, is a really interesting one, because especially for people in positions of authority or rank, right? So when a CEO of an organization walks into a meeting, and if he speaks first, then everybody just says, okay, he has spoken, I've got to fall in line behind whatever he has said, right? But a really good CEO, a humble CEO, will listen first, and they'll ask the room, the people in the meeting, his direct reports or whatever it is, he'll ask for their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions first, so that he can get the best of all those ideas and opinions out on the table before he speaks, and everybody says, I got to do what he says, kind of thing. So listening first is a huge element of being an effective leader, and especially when you're in a position of authority or rank over the people that you're leading. Keeping commitments, this goes back to delivering those results, right? Doing what we say we're going to do and following through on those commitments, right? So if we don't do that on a regular basis, and we're not consistent about doing that, pretty soon trusty roads, because of the lack of consistency.
And what frequently happens is people who, if we go back to our previous program on assertiveness, people who are not assertive tend to say yes to things they shouldn't say yes to. And so they get their plate too full. They have too many things to that they've promised they would complete, and they can't do them all. If you're really effective at juggling or spinning 5 plates, and you now have 10 plates to spin, you can't do them all. And so a lot of times people intend to keep commitments, but they commit to too much, and then they can't. And so that even inadvertently, if it's that kind of thing, that person intends to keep the commitment, they just can't do it. So it's part of keeping commitments requires the ability to say no, the ability to say, I understand that you need that done, but my plate's too full. I can't get to it. And if you need me to get to it, it's going to be 3 months or 4 months or 6 months down the road. That's part of keeping commitments.
Kathy, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say, in clarifying expectations in building trust as a leader, I think that one of the things we didn't say is that we should be letting people know the expectations that they can have of me as the leader. Not just what I have expectations of others, but what others can expect of me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you do that, that's a really good point, Kathy, because when you do that, people know right up front when they're in line with you, in alignment or out of alignment. So if you state right up front, here's who I am, here's what you can expect from me, here's what I expect and what you can expect from me. When others breach that statement or breach your position, they know up front they're breaching it, because you've already explained, you've already presented it. That's that transparency, being transparent about yourself too.
And then within that, it's also, if you will, a level of setting boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. If we don't set our boundaries, nobody else will. Right. Then the last one, 14, is extending trust, right? So we want to extend trust to people that have earned it, unconditionally, but people that haven't earned it, maybe we need to extend it conditionally, right? So it doesn't mean we just blindly trust everybody that we come across. We certainly new people that we're just establishing relationships with, they need to earn our trust before we can extend it fully to them.
Yeah, that's a factor of discernment. And oftentimes people, without being discerning, extend trust to people who shouldn't be trusted. And so they get disappointed, they get surprised, negatively surprised, and they lose trust. They lose trust of themselves, of their ability to discern accurately, and they lose trust of other people. So to extend trust, we first need to be discerning.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that, you know, kind of a counterfeit approach to this topic is giving responsibility to people without authority, right? And then micromanaging them afterwards or hovering over them afterwards. Right. If we're going to trust somebody, we need to give them the responsibility and the, you know, and the authority to make decisions or do something with that responsibility and not try to control them after, you know, after the fact. So if you think about it, you know, those 14 behaviors goes a long ways towards building trust in all of our relationships, whether those be personal relationships or professional relationships, right? Because trust is important in all areas of life, not just in our business life. So next, we want to have you think about a person who we've had have a high trust relationship with. You know, somebody that, you know, you really trust, you know, unconditionally. How would you describe that relationship, and what's the benefits of that high trust level? Who's got some thoughts on that?
I think for me, this is Cindy. I think for me, it's just about having somebody that I don't have to be reserved around, somebody that I can display my own level of honesty and integrity, understanding that they're going to receive that and not either or break the trust or criticize what I'm about.
Yeah, it's easier to be authentic and be yourself with somebody that you trust, right? Versus worrying about how they might take something you say and use it against you.
And that's a good point too, Cindy, is acceptance. You know, we trust people who don't try to change us, who to accept us the way we are. You know, when we're trying to change somebody, we're essentially saying to them, I know how you should live better than you know how you should live, right? And we all know that's not true. So that's a really good point. Someone who you can be yourself around.
Bob, you were going to say something a minute ago?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think comfortable and comfortable, kind of same one, but comfortable saying whatever and recognizing that the other person, I'm not going to be judged. We're going to have a sincere, open, transparent exchange of ideas. We may not agree, which is fine. But that's also part of trust. In a trusting relationship, I know I can tell somebody what I think, and they can still trust me even if they don't agree.
And disagreements become more a debate than an argument then, don't they?
Right.
And debates are kind of fun.
Yeah.
In debates, you know, oftentimes a debate will, you know, can change our opinion, right? Change our perspective, change our opinion. So we may come around to a different way of seeing things or a different belief, you know, which can be a good thing, right? Because we're get back to the continuously getting better and always growing or continually improving kind of thing. Sometimes we need to learn new things to continue to grow and improve.
Yeah, and part of what you just described, Bob, goes right back to that being transparent and open with one another, being free to be that.
Yeah. Do things change? I'm curious what you guys' thoughts. Do you think you can go faster with people that you trust than people you don't trust in terms of making decisions or achieving goals or accomplishments or whatever?
Oh, there's no question. The Covey's book on the speed of trust. I mean, it just makes sense. If we don't have to reestablish our relationship every time, then we can just get on with it, as opposed to I'm not sure that you, so we're gonna go do this dance until I'm comfortable and you're comfortable. Instead of, okay, we got something we need to work on, let's go, let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a direct correlation with, trust, as trust goes up, the speed goes up as well. And the costs go down, right? Costs associated with doing business, when somebody goes down, the faster we can go, the more we trust people.
Mark?
Oh, I was just going to say that around the trust thing, I remember this was one of my favorites. The axiom around how to build trust is through time and positive experience. And it's that old idea about, you can have 10 attaboys and wipe them all out with one bad experience. And I think that holds as true now as it's ever held. And it doesn't take that much to destroy years of building trust. That's why, I don't assume anything with, the people on here or that I love. They're in my circle, and because it can go way fast if not respected and treated correctly. So that's something that I remember clearly in a lot of organizations. That was a tough one because it did take time. And a lot of times they didn't have the time to do that. And so trust wasn't built to the depth and level that it could be, should be, especially to do some of the projects to move the company forward, et cetera. So it still seems to me that applies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we can't, if we go back to expectations,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. For most people, it requires time. We have to get to know that person. We can't know if they're trustworthy. We can't know if they're honest. We can't know if they are dependable, except over time.
Right.
And then when we look at expectations, there are people who just expect that nobody's trustworthy.
Right.
And for that individual, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort to ever gain their trust. Then there are people who just Pollyanna-ish, right? Trust everybody. And then they find that they get themselves in trouble because they trust too easily, right? That's where the discernment comes in on both sides of the coin, to trust or not to trust. But I agree with you. It takes time. We can't know somebody. We can perceive an individual. We all have an energy about us. If you've ever met somebody and you just immediately go, there's something off with this person, right? There's that, and that can happen pretty early. Or there's that warmth and that connectivity that can happen pretty early, but we still need the time to validate what we experience in the moment. So I agree with that. It is a time factor.
Well, I wonder if anybody here has experienced a time, with somebody where you felt like you have been disrespected or trust was violated. Through conversation, obviously, an emotionally intelligent individual can take that and reconnect and reestablish that trust. But for those that don't have that conversation, is it truly able to ever get back to that level that it was prior to a violation?
It takes a very long time. When trust has been questioned or
Violated.
damaged, it takes a very long time.
Yeah.
You think about that in marriages or whatever. Somebody cheats, for example, commits adultery in the marriage. Very few marriages survive that because it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of time to rebuild and reestablish that trust, even if the person is remorseful and promises never to do it again, kind of thing. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Mark, what you said there about a person who the trust has been broken and they don't talk about it, how to rebuild it. Well, if you don't talk about it, you can't clarify or make sure that what your perception of what happened is quote reality, or that you've held someone else at a standard that isn't necessarily what they have. There could be a misunderstanding or assumptions being made. So if you're not going to have the conversation, then first of all, there must not be trust there to start with, that you can't have the conversation. And so it gets into that kind of, if you will, messy place
Mhm.
in that. And it spins. So how can trust ever really be reestablished?
Which I guess a basic tenet, then a groundwork of EQ, emotional intelligence, is the ability to communicate and talk things through at a reasonable, adult, mature level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if
You
you
know-
are perceiving that something has, obviously something must change in a relationship when when trust seems to be broken. That that other person that believes that the trust was broken, you can see a change in them.
Right.
And, then being able to approach that yourself, and then you go, okay, what's going on here? And so if they say, oh, it's nothing, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then the response, well, it looks like something to me, right?
Yeah.
So then the next slide looks at low trust. What's the primary factor for you that causes you not to trust somebody?
Disrespect. Well, I mean, let's just take it here. I mean, if any of us in a relationship, business or otherwise, disrespected one another, would it be an easy thing to recover from and go forward on? That feels like a basic tenet of how positive relationships operate. I don't know. Anybody have any feedback on that?
Oh, yeah, that disrespect is one of my personal pet peeves.
Mhm.
Even with people that I love unconditionally, like my kids. If my
Right.
kids disrespect me, that especially I think, and this may be maybe more true for men than women even. Men have a very high need for being respected. I think
Yes.
as a gender.
Yes.
And disrespect. If somebody disrespects me, that is a hot button for me. That like no other hot button.
Well, and especially if you haven't earned disrespect. If you've earned it, then you should just suck it up and say, okay, I deserve that, right? But if you have not done anything to create a disrespectful attitude, then yes, it can be problematical. And by the way, women feel the same way.
It's just that everybody's just, they go into that defense of, well, that wasn't disrespect. That's whatever, you don't want to, when they don't want to own it.
Right. Yeah, there's some validation tries to get foisted forward.
Yeah.
Anything, the people that I have a low trust relationship have broken any one or more, severely one or more of those 14 items that you had represented earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And usually when I'll get into a low trust relationship, or I have low trust for someone, they've broken either more than one and do it consistently.
Right.
Which tells me that you give people a lot of benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
I do, but when it's finally done, man, it's done.
Done.
Yeah.
What's your biggest low trust?
So for me, it's somebody who has a very strong self-orientation
Mhm.
and doesn't demonstrate that they're interested in me. And that comes out of, I mean, how many people have come in and tried to sell you something
Mhm.
without understanding your business, what you need. They're just they're the used car salesman. I always pick on the copy machine salesman. Just here it is. You got to have this, and I don't care what you think or need. And I think for me, it's just that's an immediate turnoff.
Mhm.
And there is no trust in a relationship where somebody's not interested in me, and
Right.
vice versa.
Yeah, good point. Because if they're not interested, if they're not willing to even learn about you, right? You know that they are self-absorbed, and self-absorbed people really don't consider the needs or the wants of other people. And how can you trust somebody who's not considering your wants or your needs?
Listen first.
Yeah,
They're not doing it.
right.
You
Cindy,
know what that's incredibly apparent nowadays? LinkedIn. I get 30 to 50 solicitations
Oh, yeah.
a week
yes.
of people that want me to attend their seminar, buy their program, get their book, do this, do that. And they haven't got a clue. All they send me is some generic form that says, oh, we should be friends, let's meet. And they have no idea who I am. And that's the response I'm sending out to all of them nowadays. You have no idea what I am, what I need. And I'm a little bit, I'm gonna basically unconnect from you because you're just trying to solicit mass numbers of people. You have no idea what you're doing. And it's irritating. So I've kind of cut back on LinkedIn and the use of it. And I can remember when I started doing that early on, and I was disrespectful to the others that I was trying to solicit to as well. And yet now I start creating a relationship first before we go there.
Right. And what you're describing is what they call pull marketing versus push marketing. To pull people in, you've got to know them. You've got to understand them. You've got to consider them instead of yourself. Yeah, good. That's a good point. And you're right. That's been my experience with LinkedIn too, unfortunately.
So I got a question for everybody. Is it possible to not trust yourself or have low trust in yourself?
Which day are you talking about?
If you've had experiences where you trusted somebody and they betrayed that trust, yeah, we can definitely go into a space of not trusting ourselves.
Yeah. Or if we have, I think it's possible to not trust in ourselves if we don't know, if we haven't taken the time to invest in ourselves to understand who we are authentically and become more aware and understanding of that authentic awareness.
Kathy is saying chocolate. When it comes to chocolate, she doesn't trust herself to avoid chocolate.
Oh, I thought you meant that chocolate was the only thing we could trust because it never does you wrong.
We can trust it for sure.
Cindy, what is your large point, the main thing that causes you to not trust people?
Well, I think it depends on how I'm feeling about myself and the situation, but I probably start with a lower level of trust than maybe I should. So I guess I start there and then work my way up after I've learned about the person, listen to them talk, watch how they listen in return and accept feedback, and I start building trust that way. The people that I have the lowest trust relationships with are just people that I don't know very well. I don't come from a place of everybody's trustworthy until they're not. I'm pretty reserved in that area.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a better approach. If we're going to be slightly on the low side of trust, so that we need more data, more input. We're actually, it's better than being on the high side of discernment. So on the high side, we're saying, I trust everybody, right? Of the trust. On the low side, I don't trust anybody. So if we're gonna split one way or the other, we're gonna lean one way or the other. Leaning toward being slow to trust is certainly a better discernment approach.
Yeah. And I think if we've been wronged, especially early in life, we've been wronged by other people in pretty severe, emotional ways. I think that tends to skew our trustworthy, our ability to trust as we become adults, right? So if we were hurt by, parents or people in positions of authority, or responsibility over us, especially as young kids, I think that puts us more on that skeptical side. It's like, I don't trust people until they prove that they can be trustworthy.
Yeah, a common function of the subconscious mind is to generalize things. It makes processing easier. And if we've had that experience more than one time and we've generalized that to people in general, then trust gets really low.
All right, we're coming up on the top of the hour here, so you want to touch on the action steps real quick, Sherry?
Assess your current approach to integrity and honesty in relation to your beliefs. And again, that's a factor there. You have what you believe. Are you being authentic and honest to yourself? Do your actions align with what you believe is the right thing to do? And are there any adjustments that you need to make? Those are some questions to ask yourself. Am I in alignment with what I believe is the right thing to do? If I'm out of alignment, where am I out of alignment, and what adjustments can I make to be more trustworthy for myself, and to other people? The second one would be to take inventory of your trust building behaviors, those 18 we just looked at, and to what degree are you practicing them? Are you in alignment with the things that you trust in other people? Do you do those things yourself? The C is use the Ben Franklin method to enhance and integrate each of the 14 trust building behaviors. What Ben Franklin did is he would take one at a time. He would take one factor at a time. So of those 14. Thank you, Bob. I see Bob's saying he needs to drop off. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month. But what Ben Franklin did is he would list one thing at a time, and he'd work on just that one factor for an entire week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however long it took for him to be able to go to. He had a calendar of all of those. For him, it was 13 factors, and he would check whether he had accomplished that to his satisfaction or not. And when he had accomplished it to his satisfaction, he would go to the next thing. So he wasn't trying to do all 13, in his case, 14 for us, at one time. He was building strength and dependability around one thing at a time, because he knew once he had it, it's that old adage, we never unlearn to ride a bike. Once you learn to be that person, not do it, but be it, then it's yours, you own it. So when you look at those 14 factors and you say, I'm a little weak there, take that one factor and practice being it for a period of time until it just feels natural to you. And then you don't even have to think about it anymore, because you've now relegated it to your subconscious mind, and it just becomes who you are, not what you do.
Awesome. So any last minute questions or comments by anybody?
No, well, I would say it's nice to go over this again, because the EQ approach, and I don't always remember these pieces. I really appreciate you guys going over this again. Thank you.
Thank
Our
you
pleasure.
for that comment. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was great today, as always.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad.
I've got to get off.
All right. Just real quickly, for those of you that know people in organizations, that last month we talked about assertiveness. We have a Leap Assertiveness program for teams inside of organizations. So if you know anybody that you could refer us to on that front, we would definitely greatly appreciate that. Summary of that program for those that might see the recording of this afterwards as well. And next month, we'll be talking about dependability. Dependable leadership is a key to trust, and trust is a foundation of great leadership. So please be sure to share this invite with other people to join us. We want to build this group as large as we can. So thank you everybody very much for your participation and your engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. By the way, do we know the date for that next month?
Yes, it is. Nope, I got the wrong date on the slides.
Yeah.
Second Wednesday of the month, whatever Wednesday that is.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Beautiful.
Thank you for asking that and for noticing that.
That would be the 12th of June.